I miss the 2000s, and this is the video about the iPod Classic. Hi, today I would like to talk about why you should use an iPod Classic in 2024. You might not know this, but the iPod Classic and the iPod lineup in general has gained popularity in the recent years, so I would like to talk about and analyze the reason why it is so. Before that, I would like to talk about the history. So, let's talk about the history of the iPod lineup. The iPod lineup debuted back in 2001 and it's a series of MP3 players designed and manufactured by Apple. There are various series such as the Classic, Nano, Shuffle, and Touch. This might be too obvious because the iPod lineup itself has redefined consumer technology in the 2000s. However, the original Classic series has been long discontinued by 2024 standards, and the Touch series has been discontinued since the 7th generation back in 2022, almost 2 years ago. The iPod I have today is the 5th generation, which debuted back in 2005 with a series of 30, 60, and 80 gigabytes. The music playback time was around 14 hours, and there were various color variations such as white and black, as well as the YouTube variant. As for the reason why I recommend the 5th generation is because the DAC, or the digital to analog converter used inside of this generation, tends to be of a higher quality, giving out a more balanced sound. Now, let me explain how to use the buttons on the iPod Classic. You can see there is the menu, play and pause button, and the forward and backward buttons in all four corners of the quick wheel. While you're scrolling, you use the quick wheel to scroll like this to go up and down the menus. Honestly, this simplicity is such an Apple-like experience, still to this very day. Now, if you go on the bottom, you will see the dock connector or the 30-pin connector, a very old classic connector used by Apple. This connector might bring some nostalgia for those who use an old iPhone such as the iPhone 2G and the 3G. Moving from the dock connector used on the iPod Classic lineup, you could see there's a headphone jack and the mute switch on the top. What's a mute switch, you might ask? Well, it prevents unnecessary and unintentional clicks and touches from the click wheel when you're putting the iPod in your pocket, allowing for a more concentrated music listening experience. Now, I think we need to address the elephant in the room, which is, can you use an iPod? Software-wise, is it supported in 2024? The quick answer is yes. As long as you have a MacBook, you could still use it. Honestly, you could see how much commitment Apple takes in order to support their devices or their legacy products. However, one critical problem of syncing an iPod with a modern-day MacBook is because the M series of MacBooks have only have USB-C for a very long time. Therefore, in order to connect iPods to a modern-day MacBook, I recommend using an adapter that transfers from USB-A to USB-C. Personally, I use the adapter that comes in box with a Google Pixel device. Once you're able to connect your iPod to your MacBook, wait until you see this prompt on your screen, which tells you that your iPod has been successfully synchronized with your MacBook and your music library. Once you accept the whatever is on the prompt, look at your iPod, and if you see a screen similar like this, that means your iPod has been successfully synchronized with your Mac. When you open your Mac and see on the screen, you're able to find your iPod on the Finder app. For those who have used an iPod back in the 2010s and the 2000s, you might remember that you used iTunes instead of the Mac Finder app. Well, iTunes has been discontinued back in 2019 during Catalina, so therefore the support has moved into the OS level, and instead of using iTunes, you now use the Mac Finder app. Here, you could manually tune what you want to synchronize with your iPod depending on the type you have. For example, during the iPod 5th generation, not only you could synchronize music, you can also synchronize movies and TV shows, podcasts, as well as photos, because the iPod 5th generation used to be called the iPod Photo generation. Now, if you move to the music app, you'll first be introduced with the Apple Music section, but don't care, if you scroll down you'll be able to see the section called Devices, where hopefully you could see your iPod's name being located there. Once you click the iPod name there and the Devices section, you can see the entire list of music that has been synchronized to your iPod. However, one thing you have to be cautious about is because the files you have on your iPod has to be locally stored on your MacBook because you cannot use any music that is streamed via Apple Music or downloaded from Apple Music will simply not work. So from this point on, I would like to explain why the iPod Classic or the iPod lineup in general has regained popularity in the recent years. Well, I personally think the reason why the iPod lineup has gained such a popularity is because it's an analog single-purpose device. Personally, the example I could find is film photography. Film photography is very analog and there's a limit on how much photos you can take. However, that limitation allows photographers to experience and enjoy taking the photos, unlike smartphones. I personally believe our modern digital devices is too complex, unlike the analog devices we used to have. Despite being a digital device, an iPod is a single-purpose device. Compare that to our smartphones, which is trying to seek our attention every moment we are on our smartphones. It is hard to have a concentrated, dedicated music session, unlike an iPod or Walkman even. Therefore, I feel like the reason why the iPod has gained such momentum recently is because young, especially teens, want to have a concentrated listening experience that was lost because of the more complex nature of a smartphone. Combine that with the nostalgic factor of an iPod Classic lineup, I believe that's the main factor that is driving the momentum for more popularity and demand for these devices. Therefore, an iPod Classic is not only usable in 2024, but actually has merits that cannot be seen on an iPhone. And especially those who feel like their smartphone addiction has been overgrowing and cannot concentrate in their music listening experiences, I definitely recommend using an iPod in 2024 because of its single-purpose nature allows us, the users, to have control on whether we want to listen to music in our own time with full concentration as well as our own attentions directly towards the music files we listen. However, one downside of using an iPod in 2024 is we have to have our own files stored locally on our MacBooks, which we either have to rip from CDs or buy from iTunes, which is less ideal and more complex when compared to streaming services such as Apple Music and Spotify. Additionally, I think the iPod Touch lineup has also gained popularity or can gain popularity because the photos you can take on these iPods is quite nostalgic looking and kind of fits the Y2K aesthetic that has been growing on social media right now. So that was the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed the reasons why you should buy an iPod Classic in 2024. If you have any questions and comments, please leave them back down. And if you have the chance, please subscribe and like to this video. Most of her videos are in Japanese, so I have to apologize that this video is a remake of my old Japanese video into English. Additionally, this is not tech related, but I also run a series called the Tokyo Explained series where I dive into the history and kind of stories of places and things in Tokyo. So if you like to see that, please watch it now. Bye bye.